Everyone has a different creative process they use to generate new ideas and eventually drop them for newer ideas, inevitably never actually following through with any single project. This video will be a general overview of how that process works based on my own personal experience. Having an idea is somehow both the easiest and the hardest part about the creative process. If you're struggling for an interesting idea, I would recommend trying to go to sleep, because 99% of the time, that's when the brain will start rapidly throwing concepts at your consciousness in a desperate attempt to stave off the inevitable darkness. Most of these ideas will probably be dumb, but one or two of them might be just interesting enough for you to get really excited about. Next, you will quickly forget about these ideas, because you will be too lazy to pull out your phone and write them down. I typically find myself remembering good ideas when I'm taking a shower, because my mind has nothing else to occupy itself with, and the alternative is to silently consider the fact that Tom Holland is 23 years old, has a net worth of $4 million, is beloved by the entire American population, and hasn't been to school since he was 16, while I have $200 in my bank account, a bachelor's degree in English, and $200,000 of student debt. So once you've remembered your good idea, it's time to get to work. Now, despite having a great deal of enthusiasm for this project you've conceived of, the idea of actually sitting down and making it into a reality which might fail to live up to your expectations is most likely a terrifying prospect. So instead of getting started right away, you're likely to do just about anything else. For me, this primarily involves taking more showers, thinking about how great it's going to be when I get around to it, and sleeping. So after a while of procrastinating, you'll probably eventually feel just guilty enough to actually sit down and start writing. However, you'll likely still be too intimidated to start on the actual piece, so to make yourself feel like you're making progress, you'll start outlining the story and writing notes about characters and plot points that at this point are only loosely connected in your mind. After about 12 non-consecutive hours of this, you'll either finally feel confident enough in your project to move forward with it, or you realize your idea was actually pretty half-baked to begin with and abandon the project completely. If you end up with the latter, I recommend returning to step 1. If you find yourself with a genuinely interesting, coherent story idea, then it's time for the only step harder than coming up with the idea: being a good writer. The success of this step can vary wildly depending on how much you've practiced with the medium you're working with, and is often directly proportional to how much caffeine you've had to drink within the last 4 to 6 hours. If you're lucky, and you've already put in the time and failed at this step enough times, odds are you might end up with something decent this time around. If not, then still give it a shot anyway, because failing miserably at something is actually the first step toward producing something just good enough to bring to a workshop, and just mediocre enough that no one will give you their entire honest feedback. Once you've completed a fairly cohesive draft of your project, ideally the next step is to painstakingly labor over it until you can actually stand to read it aloud around other people. The revision process is essentially just repeatedly attempting step 5 until you've got something you don't completely hate. In the case of longer projects, there is a small possibility that you'll follow through and actually complete a rough draft of what you originally imagined, but the majority of the time, you'll either lose interest in the project first or get distracted by a new idea you got by accidentally repeating steps 1 and 2.